Hi guys, here's Paula, the crazy ozone lady, and this is another live stream. And in this live stream I will be talking about oxygen concentrators. Oxygen concentrators, this is another popular oxygen source that people who do home ozone treatments at home use. And so oxygen concentrators are an alternative to oxygen tanks, and they have many benefits in comparison to oxygen tanks. And so today I'm going to cover everything on the topic. So basically which type of oxygen concentrators you can use for ozone therapy, what quality of oxygen they produce, or how to find the correct oxygen concentrator, how to maintain the machine, how to use it correctly, which treatments you can perform with an oxygen concentrator, and whether nitrogen is a concern. Because nitrogen, so this is something that some people are wary of, say no, you should not use oxygen concentrators because they produce also nitrogen, and this makes them inadequate for ozone treatment. So I will look into this, whether this is correct or not. All right, so what are oxygen concentrators? Well, I have one such specimen here. This is my favorite oxygen concentrator. I've had numerous concentrators over in the past 12 years. I had, I think, 2 or 3 of those Respironics here, not because they broke down, but because I was traveling and so had to buy a new concentrator. I had an Invacare machine. I had also a Devil Biss, so I'm not sure how to pronounce this correctly. And I think I also had an AirSap concentrator. And this one here, this is one of my favorite ones. I also have a German Kröber machine. I do like the Kröber as well, but the Kröber is, I don't think it's available in outside of the EU. But yeah, this one, the Respironics Everflow, this is one of the best machines in my opinion. Okay, so what are oxygen concentrators? How do they work? So oxygen concentrators work by basically concentrating the oxygen percentage, the oxygen content in the air. So the air that we breathe, the air that is surrounding us, is made out of 80% nitrogen. So the overwhelming majority of what we breathe in is actually nitrogen, and only around 19 to 20% is oxygen. Then there are also gases like argon and CO2. CO2 makes up only 0.04% of the air that we breathe. But yeah, so the air that we breathe in has only around 20% oxygen. And so what an oxygen concentrator does is it sucks in the air and it filters the nitrogen out. So it uses zeolite filters, and the zeolite basically binds the nitrogen. And so what comes out of the concentrator is 90 to 97% pure oxygen. So basically, an oxygen concentrator does exactly what the name says. It concentrates the oxygen. So it turns the gas that contains only 20% oxygen into a gas that contains up to 97% of oxygen. And so an oxygen concentrator, the great benefits of an oxygen concentrator versus an oxygen tank is that as long as you have a power supply, you have unlimited amounts of oxygen. So as long as you have a well-working oxygen concentrator, you will never run out of pure oxygen for your ozone treatments. Whereas with a tank will eventually run out. It will be empty at some point, and then you have to go and refill the tank. An oxygen concentrator never has to be refilled. And so oxygen concentrators are quite durable. They can last years and years, and they really require just a minimal maintenance. So yes, those are oxygen concentrators. And so next point is, how pure is the oxygen that is produced by oxygen concentrators? And this varies greatly. It varies from model to model. There are portable oxygen concentrators. Then there are those, you see those kind of, those are the best quality concentrators, like sturdy, big machines. And those here, they produce, as I said, up to 97% pure oxygen. So the machine that you should buy if you want to use it for ozone treatments should produce oxygen purity of at least 90%, so 90% oxygen at a flow of 2 liters per minute. Now this is important, that 2 liters per minute. And the reason is that in most cases, if you buy an oxygen concentrator, you will also need something like this, which is an external regulator. And the external regulator will turn the relatively high flow that the oxygen concentrator produces into low flows of like 1/8 of a liter per minute or 1/16. And in order to achieve this, the machine has to be set at 2 liters per minute. Okay, because basically, when you have an oxygen concentrator, then you will be dealing with 2 different regulators. So one regulator is the built-in regulator in the machine, so this thing here, and the other is the external regulator, right? So this built-in regulator has to be set at 2 liters per minute in order for this external regulator to work properly. So at 2 liters per minute, your machine has to produce at least 90% pure oxygen. And so this is important. Those are one of the specifications. So we are here already at point 3 here in my overview. So when you are buying an oxygen concentrator, this is one of the specifications that you need to look at to determine whether you are dealing with a machine, with an adequate machine. So let me show you here, for example, when you go to Amazon and you type in oxygen concentrator, then one of the machines that you will see here is this thing here. Hold on a second, let me remove this panel. Okay, so here on Amazon, when you go to Amazon, you will find this machine, and it seems like a pretty good price, right? 440, and it's actually not very big, only 14 pounds, and then you think, hey, this looks like a good solution, right? Well, no, before you determine whether this is a good solution, you actually need to go to the specifications, and you need to find out the oxygen purity at 2 liters per minute. And here, unfortunately, it doesn't say so in the specifications, but luckily someone asked here the questions. So they asked, what is the oxygen purity at 5 liters per minute? And the answer was, here you see that at 1 liter per minute, it produces 90% pure oxygen, but at 2 liters per minute, it goes down to 78% of oxygen, plus minus 2%. So this right there tells you that no, this machine unfortunately is not adequate for ozone treatments. So you cannot buy this machine to do ozone treatments at home. All right, so this is one of the specifications you need to look at. So yeah, above 90, at least 90% purity at 2 liters per minute. So this is one thing. So those types of machines, so when they are new, they can cost above $1,000. But let me tell you, I don't think I've ever bought a brand new oxygen concentrator. So all the oxygen concentrators that I've ever had were refurbished machines, and they were working perfectly fine. This is another machine that I got that was used, and it's been working very, very well. So so you can actually go, for example, on eBay or on Craigslist, and you can look for used or refurbished machines. And you know that you have found a good one when it has around 5,000 hours, so not more than 5,000 hours on it, and still works perfectly. So the ideal situation is if you can actually drive over to the person who sells you the machine, and you can turn it on and see if everything works fine, and see that that the alarm does not go off after a few minutes of working. So if that's the case, if it has around 5,000 hours on it, you know, plus minus a few thousand, then you're good to go. And you can find such machines for $150, $200, $300 easy. Okay, next point is maintenance. How do you maintain an oxygen concentrator? Well, let me tell you, I barely maintain it. So they say that you have to check the filter from time to time. So here there's an external filter. So this would be, you know, I would have to remove this thing here. Okay, so this is basically where the air is sucked in, okay? And you see, so there's something like this, okay, but this is not a filter, it's just a protection. Yeah, but here, this is where the air is sucked in, and so you want to make sure that this is free of dust, and yeah, and just clean it from time to time. And other than that, I believe there is really not much that you need to do. If there is something up with the machine, then the alarm will go off, and the machine will let you know that that needs to be fixed. So yeah, so this is the great thing about oxygen concentrators, that really it's like very, very low maintenance. Okay, now how do you use it correctly? So here's the thing. So before you use the oxygen concentrator, you should let it run for at least 10 minutes, because that's how long it takes for the machine to start producing maximum oxygen output. And I have to admit that I don't always keep to this. I don't have that much patience, but this is the correct way to go about it. So later I will turn it on, and I will demonstrate how that sounds and how this works. But before we will do this, I will show you how to connect the oxygen concentrator here to the regulator. So basically, how this will work is that basically you will connect the oxygen concentrator to the external regulator, and then the external regulator to the ozone generator. And for this, we will need some silicone tubing and a number of Lulok connectors. Okay, so Lulok connectors, those are those things here. I'm not sure you can see them. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take one of the longer tubings, and so one end of the tubing just goes here to the outlet of the machine, so I will just push it in here like this. All right, as you pull on it, and you see this makes for a pretty good connection. Then I take the end of this tubing, I take one of the connectors, it's a male Lulok, all right, so I have something like this. Wait, let me put this here in front of this, and maybe there's a better contrast. And now I take this. Okay, I think there's too much light. I don't think I can see this well. Let me make a little less light. Okay, so here, this machine, this is not a machine. It's really just a regulator, just like a metal gadget. So here it has an oxygen inlet, and there is a valve so that I can, with an off button, so I can either close or open the influx of the oxygen into the box. And so I take here the Lulok connector that I press into the silicone tubing, and I screw this here into the oxygen in port. Okay, and here is an oxygen out port. Okay, I think there's too much light here for you to see this, but it says here oxygen out, And so now I need to connect the oxygen out with the oxygen input of my ozone generator. And for this, I take the smaller tubing. I take 2 more male Lulok connectors, press them both into each end of the silicone tubing. Okay, so this is like, I don't know, maybe 12 inches long. I screw one end of the tubing here into the oxygen out port of the regulator. This goes here into the oxygen in on the ozone generator. Okay, and now I take yet another silicone tubing and another male Lulok, press it here into the silicone tubing. Then I connect it into the ozone out port of the ozone generator. And now I could put this tubing, for example, inside my ozone sauna, and I would be having an ozone sauna. All right. So yeah, again, so the oxygen goes from the oxygen concentrator here into the input of the external regulator, and then the output of the external regulator is connected with the oxygen input of the ozone generator. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn the machine on. And so before I do this, I make sure that the off lever here on this gadget is turned towards the box. So the oxygen will just flow out here. Okay, so I turn it on. And you heard there was a beep sound, so this is normal for this model, but different other makers of oxygen concentrators like Invacare or Devilbiss, they may have some different sounds, maybe like a beep, 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 and then it will run. So the sound varies from machine to machine, I believe. So, and you can hear, that there's like a pumping sound or like a pulsating sound. So, and because there is a pump, I believe, or there is some pulsating movement going on, which basically presses the air together and then presses it through the azylite filter, and then what comes out is oxygen. So when I turn the machine on, it should have, the green light should go on, and the green light tells me that everything is running fine, so that everything's well. And then I take here the regulator, the built-in regulator, and here you see I can adjust the flow, and I make sure that the flow, so that the ball here, the black ball that shows me the setting here, the level of oxygen, that this is at 2 liters per minute. Okay, and so now if I was doing this properly, I should be waiting for 10 minutes for the machine to warm up, so that I'm sure that it produces the maximum oxygen contents that it can produce. And then afterwards, I then flip here this off lever on the external regulator. So the off lever right now shows towards the box. That means that the oxygen is flowing in here, and it comes out here at the bottom. Okay. Now after 10 minutes, I would flip this off lever, so I would open the flow into the box. So now the oxygen flows inside, and now I can adjust the flow here with this knob. And you see there's like a tiny black ball. I'm gonna switch over to the other camera. Maybe I can see this better. Okay, so you see there's a tiny black ball here, right? And this black ball, it moves here because I keep moving the whole thing. So this black ball tells me, helps me in setting here the flow. So I can And the flow, I can set the flow here with the help of this thing down to 1/16 of a liter per minute. Okay, so this is a very, very fine gadget. And this is still, there's a lot of light here, so I'm not sure you're seeing this correctly. Okay, so here I can set this to those minimal flows that are required for ozone treatments. Okay, so here another close-up, you see there's an off valve. So now the all off thing shows here down, so basically the oxygen is flowing in here, and I can set the correct flow to with this knob. If I was doing vaginal insufflations, for example, I would set it at 1/8 of a liter per minute, and then it comes out here through this tubing and goes into the ozone generator. Okay, so this would be a setup for an oxygen concentrator. Now, sometimes you can get lucky, extremely lucky, and you can find oxygen concentrators already with a built-in low flow regulator. So instead of this thing, instead of saying 0 to 5 liter per minute or 0 to 10 liter per minute, it will say 0 to 1 liter per minute. Now, if you find such a machine, then go for it, buy it, definitely. If it works well, if it has around 5,000 hours on it or less, go and get it. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it off right now because I'm not sure that you guys can hear me properly with the sound here. So yeah, so sometimes, as I said, sometimes you can get the machines with a built-in low flow regulator. Sometimes you can also find a shop or some handyman who is versed in repairing and dealing with oxygen concentrators, who may be able to exchange the built-in regulator for a low flow regulator. So those things here, those regulators, you can actually buy them also separately. And if you can find someone who knows how to do this without damaging the machine, then as I said, they can just exchange this thing. And in such a case, you don't need this external gadget anymore, okay? But this is rare. But I do remember that one of my Respironics overflows, it was actually one that already had a built-in low flow regulator, and that was perfect. That was awesome. Okay. Oh, another possibility. This is also an older. This is an older video I've done with Teresa. Is we show how to make this gadget here, this external low flow regulator, how you can do it yourself with just out of a cardboard box, and with an external. This part you can buy externally for like $30, and with an empty cardboard box you can actually make such an external low flow regulator. So this is one of the videos that you can find on my channel, and so you can make this for $30 or less. Okay, where's my overview here? What's the next thing? So yeah, how do I use it correctly? So yeah, so we just showed this. Oh, another tip that I was told by I believe by the gentleman who supplied this concentrator to me. He said that you should let a concentrator run for at least like 30 minutes every day, ideally, but I think if you do it, a few times a week, then it will make sure that the concentrator survives longer. So he said that, just to make sure that it runs, that everything runs properly. And I believe there's some oil inside, and so if the machine is not used for a longer time, then something can happen with the oil. It can get old, and old, I guess. And so then let's say if you don't use a concentrator for a few years and you then try to turn it on, then it's possible that it will not work. So he said that it's a good idea to just turn it on regularly, to make sure that the motor that is inside just runs, for some time every week. Okay, next point. Which treatments for which treatments can you use oxygen concentrators? So in general, you can use oxygen concentrators for every non-invasive ozone treatment. So non-invasive means everything that does not have to do with needles. So as long as it's not an intravenous form of ozone therapy or some other injection like intramuscular injection, subcutaneous injection, then you can use oxygen concentrators. So basically for everything, for all the insufflations, for saunas, making water, for cupping, for bagging, limb bagging, for whole body bag whole body bag treatments, as I said, for all the insufflations, including nasal insufflations. So basically everything which does not require the puncturing of the skin, you can use oxygen concentrators. But there's a but. So I was visiting Russia for a course in ozone therapy, and they were actually using oxygen concentrators for everything. So they were doing ozonated saline drips, even with concentrators. They were also doing major autohemotherapy with oxygen concentrators and even injections. But it's possible is because they did this because they didn't have access or they didn't have the funds to buy oxygen tanks. I don't know. But no one was dying, so they seem to be fine with this. But I would not use oxygen concentrators for invasive treatments. And this is also the understanding among Western doctors not to do this. So any type of invasive treatments for this, it's better to use oxygen tanks. But this is just some information that some may find interesting or not, because when it comes to ozone therapy, there's really everyone has a different opinion on every ozone treatment, and there are always exceptions. And ozone therapy is kind of a very very open type of a medical practice. All right, so next question is nitrogen a concern? So many people, when they hear oxygen concentrators and ozone therapy, they say, no, you should not use them under no circumstances because of the nitrogen content. So here's the thing. So the question is, okay, how much nitrogen is coming out of those machines? And so what I did, I actually contacted a number of manufacturers of oxygen concentrators, and two of them answered. So one of them was the German manufacturer Krüber. As I said, I also have a Krüber concentrator. I really like it. And they actually said that what comes out of their machine does not contain any nitrogen at all, which surprised even me, but this is what they said. They said that this is 95% and above oxygen, and the remaining gases, he said, is CO2 and argon gas. And he says that the majority of this remaining, like 3 to 5%, was CO2 and a tiny, maybe 1 or 2% argon gas. But he said there was no nitrogen. Now, another manufacturer, I believe it was Invacare, or was it Respironics, I'm not sure, one of them, they said that what comes out of the machine is between 95 to 97% oxygen. It also depends on the flow. So basically, the lower the flow is, the higher the oxygen purity. So he said it can be between 95 to 97% oxygen, and then up to 5% nitrogen, and then some argon and some CO2. So it can be, according to my information, can be anything between 0 to 5% nitrogen. This is maximum, they said. Okay, so now the question is, okay, is that much? Let's assume it's the maximum that I was told, which is 5% nitrogen. Is this a concern? And now some say that basically when you feed the nitrogen into the ozone generator, they say that it turns into nitrogen oxides. So things like NO or NO2, so either nitrogen oxide or nitrogen dioxide. And so here's what I did is I actually looked into this because I wanted to find out, is this really a possibility? Is it possible that nitrogen oxides are produced during ozone therapy with oxygen concentrators, number one? And number two, how dangerous are those? And what I found out really surprised me. Well, on one side, yes, it did surprise me. On the other side, it kind of did not. So now let me switch over here to my article that I wrote on the subject. So this is an article I wrote last year here. Is it safe to use an oxygen concentrator for ozone therapy? And so what I did is I looked into studies which dealt with nitrogen oxide and nitrogen dioxide. And so one of the main things that I found, because nitrogen oxide, they are also known as pollutants. So we're being told that nitrogen oxides are dangerous because they're produced by as byproducts of industries and of car exhaust gases. And what I found, on the other hand, is a paper by the World Health Organization, which said that around 95% of all nitrogen oxides which are found in the atmosphere of our planet are produced by natural sources such as biological processes in soil and water, trees, bushes, grasses, yeasts, lightning, volcanic eruptions, or forest fires. And only 5 to 10% of nitrogen oxides are produced by humans. All right, but if we listen to the news, it would seem that it's exactly the other way around, that basically the majority of nitrogen oxides are produced by humans and the rest is possibly, well, they don't even mention that it's a naturally occurring gas. They make it look like it's all produced by humans, but in reality, no, this is 95% of all nitrogen oxides are made by nature, essentially. Okay, so once I found this out, then I wanted, then it was sounding unlikely that those gases would be dangerous, right? But then I looked at studies, whether there are studies which found which looked at the effect of those nitrogen oxides on humans, and so there are several studies on nitric oxides, so NO. And so NO has actually therapeutical, it has therapeutical, what you call it? So it's beneficial. It has therapeutical effects, and it can be actually good to treat respiratory issues even in infants. All right, and so there are 3 different studies that I found, which showed that nitric oxides NO, that it is so safe that it can be given to babies which are younger than 10 years old, so, and nearly like also I believe newborns, and that this has been shown to also help with pain, with respiratory issues, and with sickle cell disease. Okay, so then I looked at nitrogen dioxide, because, okay, if nitrogen oxide or nitric oxide, if this was not the problem, maybe it was nitrogen dioxide. And so what I found is that there are numerous studies which were conducted, and so what they did, they exposed humans to multiple times the levels of nitrogen dioxide that is found in our atmosphere. And I could not find a single study that was a randomized placebo-controlled study which came to the conclusion that that nitrogen dioxide was dangerous. Or maybe, hold on a second, maybe there was one study which showed that, but the overwhelming majority, they all came to the conclusion that, like, for example, this one, nitrogen dioxide does not appear to be a major arbiter of the adverse cardiovascular effects of air pollution. Another said, the data lend support to the idea that the epidemiological data associating cardiac outcomes with NO2 are more likely due to an associated pollutant rather than NO2 itself. Then another one is they found no significant symptomatic or physiologic responses to nitrogen dioxide could be detected in either the young or the elderly control group. Another study said no significant changes were noted in the lung functions test after NO2 exposure. Another found is that the negative results which they found was not likely caused by NO2. Another was the results do not suggest a considerable acute adverse response in human subjects after 3 hours of exposure to NO2 in the NO2 concentration range, and so on and so forth. And so I really looked at a whole bunch of studies. You see here all those links here. Those are studies that I found. So this is, I don't know, did I come across another conspiracy theory, another one of those things where the science says one thing and yet what is being published by mass media is completely, like 180 degrees to that? It looks like that to me. Like, as I said, there are many different randomized placebo-controlled studies with nitrogen dioxide, and they all show, or maybe, as I said, there may be like 1 or 2 studies which show like some small risk that was there, but the majority of the studies, they could not show any adverse reaction, any adverse effect after exposing humans to nitrogen dioxide multiple times the levels of nitrogen dioxide that we breathe in cities, which are supposed to be the most polluted ones. So here is the conclusion that I came to in regards to nitrogen is that it does not seem to be dangerous. So even if nitrogen oxides are produced during the usage of oxygen concentrators, there is no reason to believe that this could be somehow detrimental to your health. And if there is a nitric oxide, so NO, this could be actually even beneficial, okay, as crazy as this may sound. But apart from nitric oxide, so apart from NO and NO2, nitrogen dioxide, there's also another gas that can be produced. Let me switch over here again. This is nitric acid, or NHO3. And this is a strong acid, and it is a very corrosive material, and this could be dangerous. So what I did, I contacted a manufacturer of those big as industrial type of ozone generators that run on air, and I asked him, what is the danger of producing an NHO3, nitric acid? And he explained to me that was Joel Lusing from Oxidation Technologies, and he answered by mail, and he explains that in order to produce NHO3 nitric acid, you need moisture, you need water in the gas before the gas goes into the ozone generator. So if the gas is mixed with nitrogen and with water and then goes into your ozone generator, then you can produce nitric acid. But this is, with oxygen concentrators, this is as good as impossible. Why? Because they are pressed through multiple filters, and all those filters, they extract moisture out of the gas. So the gas that comes out of an oxygen concentrator is extremely dry. It is actually so dry that most oxygen concentrators come by default, they come with a humidifier. So that people who rely on oxygen concentrators because they have some lung problems, that they first run the gas through water before they breathe it in to moisten it. Okay, so he said that no, this is not possible. So like this is not something that happens when you feed oxygen that comes out of an oxygen concentrator, when you feed that into an ozone generator. And so he said, I was quoting him here. So he said, However, HNO3 production within the ozone generator and piping will cause reliability problems very quick within weeks or days. So yeah, so if there is water and if you produce NHO3, so this can corrode and this can even damage the ozone generator inside, right? But he says that, the gas that they produce is extremely dry, the oxygen concentrators. So this is, again, this is not a concern. Let me see, I have the overview. So much to oxygen concentrators. Now, let me see if there are any questions. No, there are no comments and no questions. So, I hope that this was helpful, that this was informative. So, just a short summary. So oxygen concentrators are a great alternative to oxygen tanks. They don't need to be refilled as long as you have power supply. You have oxygen, they need minimal maintenance, but you need the proper oxygen concentrators. So don't go for those portable ones, because their oxygen purity that they produce is not high enough. So you need to look for something that produces oxygen of at least 90% at a flow of 2 liters per minute. Number one, those also should not be pulsed oxygen concentrators. So some concentrators they're sold as pulsed machine. I'm not quite sure what that means. I think that it's not like a constant oxygen flow, but it comes like in like pulses or waves, I believe. Those are not adequate for ozone therapy. So low maintenance, high oxygen purity, nitrogen is not really a concern. The maximum nitrogen that they produce is 5% tops. The nitrogen oxides that can be produced are also not a health concern. From my research, at least, they can be even beneficial. So this is, that much on oxygen concentrators. Should you have any questions about that, let me know in the comments. You will find links to the equipment that I'm showing here, that I'm using here. You can find links in the description of the video. So if you're interested in buying them, you can just click on them and they will direct you to the shop. A disclaimer, of course, none of this is to be understood as medical advice. I'm just a crazy ozone lady talking some stuff about ozone therapies. If you're sick, go see a doctor. Always listen to the World Health Organization. Always listen to our overlords. Only they have the ultimate truth, the ultimate facts. All right, that was it. That was another installment in the basics of home ozone treatments, and we will continue in a few days. Thank you and bye.